actually, we all froze. Okay, we're back. Welcome to another episode of Command Control Power. We have a focus today on some UniFi updates and Sonos, and also maybe an update on Sam's trip. He recently got back from a trip overseas. And so I won't say that we got the band back together, but I will say that we're all
we
here.
got a full house.
Yeah,
Full house.
Nice. Right.
Big push.
I gotta update my cliche database here, but yeah, it's good to be back on the horn with you guys, on video here. For those of you listening to this, you can also watch us on YouTube, and we do a live stream as a benefit to our Patreon supporters, and so you can watch these and listen to these episodes ahead of the public, and you also get some great Patreon content there. So another little plug for that. But yeah, it's good to be back on with you guys. Sam, how was that trip overseas?
It was good. I was away so long I forgot to pay the heating bill, hence my hat.
That's right.
Yeah, I'm a little under the weather today, but no, it was incredible. I was in China and Japan, and China for work and Japan for fun. And I've been to China before, so I've talked about that on the show where I was doing some work out there. And then it was kind of interesting. Since I'm on that side of the world, I mean, how often is that happening? I opted for a 3-hour flight to Tokyo, and a friend of mine, my Dutch friend, he's not working right now. There's a whole other story behind that, but he's like, I'll join you. And he just booked a trip to Tokyo, and we hung out there for a few days. Pretty amazing, if not overstimulating city, I'll say.
Huh.
Did you guys sleep in any tubes?
No, but we hung out in this area called the Golden Guy, where it's like a series of different alleyways and bars that are literally able to only fit 4 to 5 people. You walk in, kind of duck your head, and there's a little bar there, and there's one bartender, and you can have a drink and then move on to the next spot. It was pretty amazing.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Wow. How do you design a business around like a total occupancy of 4 people?
I know. I know.
Charge 10 times for every drink. I mean, what were the prices like in there?
They were actually pretty reasonable. I mean, overall in Tokyo, I was a little shocked about how, I mean, it wasn't like cheap, but it wasn't drastically expensive as I kind of expected it to be. The dollar went pretty far. So
nice.
Nice.
Yeah. We got out of the city for a day because, again, just a lot of lights and stimulation. We left to a small beach town called Kamakura and hiked along there and saw this giant Buddha. It was amazing and just, yeah, really, really incredible. I got lots of great pictures and we had an amazing time. But I was ready to come home. I mean, I was gone for 2.5 weeks, and that's a long time to be gone.
And you, last time around, I think you brought your wife to China, and this time it was just yourself. Yes.
Right. So this was during the school year, so she couldn't come with me. So I was away by myself that entire time. So we're just like, FaceTiming at night or in the morning, or depending on, at one point with daylight saving, Tokyo was 14 hours ahead. So that's a pretty drastic difference.
Yeah.
People kept joking with me, how's the future over there? Like we do with our Australian friends.
Yeah. Well, I bet, in Japan especially, it sounds like they're living in the future a little bit in terms of like some of the technology and how it's integrated into a lot of the, just kind of infrastructure. I mean, I don't know much about it, but it sounds a little bit futuristic. Did you get that vibe there?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of even the small little dive restaurants, it's all digital and you don't interact with a waiter or anything like that. You go to the screen and you choose your language and you pick out your foods, and then you actually, there's a guy there that his only job is to take your receipt that spits out of the computer and bring it over to the kitchen, which is like 2 feet away. So he does that. And then, he just helps you, I guess, if you need. But yeah, everything was, and some are more helpful than others. I mean, some people are more helpful than others, depending on the establishments that you go to. But we found some great places to go where they were very friendly and welcoming. The best place we went to is actually, we were the only non-Japanese people in there, and that's how we knew, okay, this is local, this is great, and nobody spoke English at all, where in some places they did, and the food was incredible. Just outstanding food. It was like Japanese tapas, basically, like little small plates of different kinds. And again, you scan and you order on an app, and You do it that way.
Nice.
And then actually, funny story about this place, you scan a QR code at the bar where we were sitting. And so we each scanned and we are just like picking different things to order.
Mhm.
And then by the end of the night, I'm like, all right, I'm just going to pay up. So I paid. And then I didn't really pay attention to how much it was. And then my friend's like, oh, I got to pay too. So he's like trying to pay. He's like, it's not working for me. And she's like, you scan the same QR code. She's like, he paid for everything. And I was like, oh, shit. And I was like, I paid for the whole meal. I was like, I was wondering why our prices were so similar when we looked in our apps.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
You probably wouldn't look for one of these, but I understand in Japan, there's these places called jazz kisas, and you can KISSA, and you could go in and you could sit down and have a cocktail, and there's a DJ spinning vinyl, like jazz vinyl.
Oh, really?
Like an elegant stereo system. And there's a number of them. There's a whole book printed where you could find these in the major cities, but that sounded pretty cool. Sometime being able to see something like that.
Now I have to go back.
Yeah. Jazz Kisa.
Yeah. My friend recommended a whole bunch of places who had been out there, and I got to like half of them. Just there was so much to do out there.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It sounds like a real fun time.
Yeah. I'm sure you can't
cool.
say much about the actual, the work side of the trip, but talk about an on-site. I mean, that's another continent. That's a whole new world there. I hope you didn't leave behind a screwdriver or like a flash drive or anything like that.
No, but
Nice.
it's funny. Like it was my second time in Shanghai, and I was just, after a while, you get to know a city. It's not as exciting anymore or fun even. Well, I wouldn't consider it it's a beautiful city. There's so much going on, but it's not like a social city, if that makes sense. Like, it's not like, oh, I'm going to go to the pub and meet some people or anything. It's very isolating. As a matter of fact, there was actually, this is the first time I went there on this trip. So I use an app. Actually, a friend of mine told me about this great app called Atlas Obscura. And just put, it? I didn't know about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And both you guys knew. And so,
I've heard of it. I haven't used it. So yeah,
basically finds these like obscure sites and things to see in a particular location. So I used it when I was there, and there is this place called People's Park where parents go and sit and have signs that describe their adult children trying to find them mates, because there are so many people that are not married, or they haven't found anyone in Shanghai. So. And then there are other parents walking through the park, picking up on this information and talking to the other parents and learning about their children and hopefully finding a connection. That was pretty fascinating to see, actually.
That's the opposite of online dating. It's like the most analog you can get. And the parents, I mean, that's a whole other level too. Like, right.
It's the parent. There were no young people there doing that.
Yeah. No, I've been with my wife for almost 20 years now. It's like, I talk about how I have no idea what the dating world is like these days, but I mean, that's a whole new level. Like, where you're just like parents in a park setting you up with like a stranger. I mean, that's, maybe they know better. I mean, that's a good.
Who knows? Yeah. I mean,
And you went there. You checked it out.
I walked around there and everything, and I took a couple of pictures, but I kind of didn't. I didn't feel right taking too many pictures of people, and it felt very raw and personal, So, but I wanted to send something home to my wife to show, and my kids to just show this interesting aspect of life.
Atlas Obscura is also a website too, and you could just look up a destination, like one of the places that I think I knew this pre-existed, but it's in Atlas Obscura. If you ever go to Berlin, there's a church that has the patron saint of spinsters, and she's in a clear glass coffin in the church, and you can see this woman, in full skeleton head.
Wow.
Whoa.
And she's dressed up in some elaborate outfit with beads and jewelry, and you can see the bony hands. Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Holy cow, that is crazy.
Yeah.
That's in Berlin, you said?
Yeah, Berlin, Germany. Yep.
Amazing.
Wow.
Yeah, this is a great app.
Excuse me. Edit point. That is in Munich. I misspoke, not Berlin, Munich.
Okay. Still, Germany, you got the country right, so you're all good.
Exactly.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, close enough.
I'll share that with you guys after the show. I have some pictures.
Nice.
Excellent.
Awesome.
We'll put it in our show notes.
Yes.
First time we have somebody in a coffin in our show notes.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh man, but I'm happy to be back stateside. It was a long ways.
I bet.
Yeah.
I got a million
Long ways,
stories,
a long
but we
trip.
won't take up a whole show about them.
Nice. Nice. So yeah, should we get into some UniFi stuff? I have a UniFi upgrade I did in my home office. We have an on-site that Tim just completed that required a little bit of UniFi and Sonos configuration as a follow-up to something we've talked about. A little tip that Jerry and I discovered live about a UniFi product. So yeah, just a few things like that. And Sam, you have some UniFi. Do you want to tease your? You had a big UniFi thing, I think you said.
Oh, how do I tease it? Okay, well there was a major issue with the 107 access points that we recently had installed.
Oh, yeah.
Did I talk about this? No, I didn't.
No, but I think we maybe like learned a little bit about it through Slack and our text thread. And Jerry thinks he thought he told you how to avoid that situation in the first place.
No,
right,
Jerry? No.
No,
I don't think so.
There.
Okay. No, I thought. Well, so okay. I want to hear about that because 107 access points is it's the real deal right there. So
no kidding.
Well, all right. So my stuff's pretty minor by comparison. Just the first thing is I recently relearned, because I think I knew this at some point, that the UniFi SE, the UDM SE, we know that it has PoE Plus and PoE, but it turns out that PoE Plus is only on 2 of the ports. And I didn't realize that at first. And Jerry and I realized that live together, kind of troubleshooting something. And so it's a little PSA. Just remember, certain pairs have, or certain ports have PoE Plus and others have PoE on that model. So
yeah, and more specifically, this takes effect because with the most recent iteration of the UniFi access points, the 7s, it needs Plus. Right. And it won't work without it. And they do not ship them with injectors anymore. There was a time when you would get it and you'd have your injector and you'd be good to go. But, if you're thinking of redoing your home or, one of your big customers and you got to put in 7 access points, UniFi access points that are Wi-Fi standard 7, you need to energize those ports. And if you've got a Dream Machine Pro SE, you can only do it on 2. So you need injectors for the other access points.
That's right.
That's definitely good to know.
Yeah, I just did a deep dive on just, what's appropriate for kind of a small home office setup because I had the UDR. I had the UDR. It was actually an early access model when they first came out. I think I got it for like a really low price. I think it was like cheaper than when it went live, and it ended up being, I think, $199 for that product. It has a gigabit WAN port, but as everyone by now probably knows, it doesn't support gigabit speeds. So yeah, the port, the port supports gigabit, but the device doesn't. So,
That's
minor
ridiculous.
Asterisk. They added a little, literally like an asterisk in the product description, and then like at the bottom, it's like, well, it doesn't actually get a gigabit speeds, FYI, after the fact, but we had a couple deployed before we learned that. So I had one here in my home office and I didn't mind that it didn't have gigabit speeds. I figured, I don't really need like gigabit internet, but I do pay for, symmetrical 1 gig fiber, which is, as I've mentioned before, $35 a month. It's a special rate. I think it's normally like 65 or 75, but they put out this like $35 for life kind of plan. I'm
For
sure
life?
until I move. Yeah. So they're like, in theory, if they don't like just discontinue the entire offering or something, I'm sure there's a weaselly way to get out of it. But yeah, that's or if I move, I'm sure I lose it then. But yeah, so it's the cheapest internet I've ever had in my life, going back to, dial up probably even.
Yeah, AOL was $21.95 at one point.
That's right. I was gonna say after the 10,000 hours expired, then then it was then it was more expensive. But so I thought, okay, I want gigabit. I have gigabit coming in. I want to get gigabit to my device. So okay, what do I need to do? Well, first of all, I can't use the UDR, so I need a new cloud gateway of some sort. So I looked at all the different options. I decided on a Cloud Gateway Max because it's the best blend for me. It has the Protect built in, so I can do both the network app, obviously, as a network controller, and Protect, and other apps too. So if I wanted even one or two cameras, and I want to be able to play with that and test that. I don't really need a camera, but it's nice to have that capability. So I wanted something that would support that. So that was one factor. It has 2.5 gig ports built in, which is great. However, it lacks PoE. So speaking of the PoE plus, conversation, this device has the fast ports, supports the gigabit, uplink, but doesn't support PoE on the output on the device itself. So I figured that was a fair trade-off. There's really no other device out there that's a controller that supports 2.5 that also has PoE out. So this was fine. I had the flex switch, so I figured, for some of the devices that don't need anything, over gigabit speeds, the flex switch is fine. But of course, the other benefit of the UDR is that it includes PoE built in, PoE plus. So it was powering my flex switch. The flex switch in turn was powering a camera and the UniFi LTE backup. So, it was nice to have that elegant setup where I didn't need any power injectors. I just had the UDR and a flex switch. It's all self-contained. Pretty cool. Access point built in. A lot of bang for the buck in the UDR, I have to say. And it was stable for a number of years. So I had to add two PoE injectors, one for the flex switch, one for the access point. And the reason that I didn't want to run the access point off of the flex switch is because the flex switch is 1 gig, not 2.5. So if I wanted to preserve the 2.5 gig uplink for the access point, I needed it essentially plugged directly into the new gateway. Another option I could have gone with is, I believe it's the Enterprise 8 PoE. So they do make a switch that has 2.5 gig ports with PoE plus, but it doesn't have PoE plus plus. And I know Jerry always, likes to make fun of my plus, PoE plus, plus plus. How many pluses do we need? But for now, I don't need plus plus, but in the future, it might be beneficial to have PoE plus plus sent down an Ethernet line to like a switch at the other end of the house or something like that. So I didn't want to spend, it's like $400 or something like that, or it's like it's like $479, I believe, for a device that doesn't support PoE plus, as of today. And I could get by with my flex switch. So that's what I did with the injectors. There's also the Pro Max 16 PoE, which is priced less than the Enterprise 8 PoE, which is $399. So not terrible, but it's still enough to spend where I want to make sure it's like my future-proof solution. And I don't need 16 ports today. This switch is physically larger. I don't have a lot of space. So I decided just to stick with this current setup and use the injectors for now, which is ultimately just cheaper. So that's what I went with. So everything went well. I basically just, set up the new cloud gateway, restored from backup, plugged in the access point and adopted it, and I'm back in business. The access point did, with the benefit of Wi-Fi 7 and 6 gigahertz, I was able to get like 900 something megabits on my iPhone 16 Pro because it has a 6 gigahertz radio in the same room as the access point. I have a 400 square foot apartment approximately, so I don't need more than one access point. However, I noticed that when I walked out of this room, down the short hallway into the kitchen, I would lose service. It would, like, my Wi-Fi would drop, especially it seemed like on the upstream side, the upload side. So I'd be running a speed test and it would just like and stop. Or I would be on a phone call and ring central on my iPhone. If I carry the phone with me down the hall, got my AirPods in, I would hear the little bloop bloop, sound that the VoIP call is disconnecting. And so I knew that was not going to be sustainable because I like to pace around when I'm on client calls, and go get myself a drink of water or whatever. So I'm not going to be trying to pay attention to, I can't walk out of Wi-Fi range, just 25 feet away or whatever. So at first I thought, well, let me try. I had the AP sitting on a shelf that's just about eye level, basically, and just sitting kind of like you would, on its base as a dome, like upright, which is not the recommended way. They're meant to be like ceiling mounted, basically. Or wait, is it wall mounted or ceiling mounted? I think
Ceiling.
ceiling mounted. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And Sam, I'm sure you have a story about your, 107. You're going to mount them correctly if you're going to do a job like that. So you would know. So I thought, man, does it make that much of a difference? So I thought, well, this is a genius idea. I'll just flip it over and just let it like rest and balance on the dome for a little bit and just see if like maybe something to do with the signal propagation would be different. At first I thought it might be a little different, but in practice, I don't think it really was. Then I thought, well, I've got to, put my big boy pants on, as Jerry would say, and actually mount the thing on the ceiling. So I got up there, I mounted the thing, got some nice new cables to, hide them, and got it all mounted and was still having the same issue. Because I certainly thought, if it's way up high on the ceiling and, it would kind of get through, like it wouldn't be blocked by the refrigerator or whatever the issues I thought might be happening. But it didn't fix it. I was still having this drop off in one specific area. And by the way, it's a lot easier to troubleshoot this stuff when it's your own stuff than when it's a client, because they're going to be telling you all kinds of details that may or may not be related. And, they're just going to complain about bad Wi-Fi. They're not going to notice that it's like, if I stand at this one spot, I can make it happen every time, which made my life easier, saying, okay, is it better now? Nope. Okay, let me try this. Is it better now? Nope. So that, faster cycle on the troubleshooting was really helpful.
Right.
So I had a mental model for this. I was thinking, okay, so I've got the faster speed when I'm right in the same room. I know that the old Wi-Fi worked just fine everywhere, no issues with any dropouts. And what's the difference? Well, the new one is this really fast speed thanks to 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi. So I thought maybe it's a 6 gigahertz thing. So I turned off the 6 gigahertz radio, and sure enough, 5 gigahertz was much better. Didn't have the issue. But I thought, can I have the best of both worlds? I want 6 gigahertz right here, and I want it to just fail over to 5 gigahertz as I walk down the hall. That should be built in. That I didn't think I was asking for too much.
Yeah.
So I looked into the settings on the access point, and I realized there's a setting, minimum RSSI. Have not really played with that very much, but my understanding is, that should essentially require a certain minimum like signal strength on that specific radio between your client device and the AP. To allow that connection, and it should drop, and switch channels or switch radios if you drop below that minimum threshold. So I turned it on and I tested it, and it made a difference.
And what did you set it to, please?
So the default was minus 80 RSSI or minus 80 dBm, I guess. Yeah. And so that seemed to like solve it, but then I wasn't quite sure it was perfect. So I kind of played with different settings. I think ultimately I landed on like 88 or something. Let me just, I can double check that live. Yeah.
That's a bit high, right, Sam?
Yeah.
Right. That's what I thought too, because that would like require basically like clear line of sight, in the same proximity, like you should have a pretty clear signal. Otherwise it's going to drop immediately, but it worked. I mean, I'm able to like have the fast connection in this one room. And then as I move down the hall, it does switch. It keeps working. I don't notice that it's switching. It just works. Yeah. So minus 88 was what I landed on.
Wow. Okay. I mean, it worked.
It worked. Yeah. So then of course, I mean, I thought, okay, it worked great, but that took trial and error. It took me kind of having an intuition about like what might be the cause of this problem and what changed and whatever. And I thought, let me reach out to the collective and see like, what do people suggest about this? Like, what's best practice? I mean, I thought out of the box, it should just do the right thing. Like if my device loses the signal down the hall, shouldn't the UniFi access point like just switch, or my device should just switch to 5 gigahertz? Why am I having to tune this at all? But so I put it out there to the collective. Oh, by the way, I also tried I tried changing the transmit power to high, just thinking like, oh, maybe auto wasn't doing it, but that didn't seem to do anything. So Victor Glem of Origin 84 wrote back with this recommendation for this website. Have you guys seen this? I don't know if you saw the chatter about this, but it's called wisfi.com. That's the address of the site that Victor recommended.
No.
So wisfi.com. So wisfi.com. Confusing name, I have to say, but an amazing resource. And Command F is your friend here, so you want to just sort of page through it, and Command F is
page.
So you're looking for. Yeah, it's a big scrolling wall of text. And at first, I was just overwhelmed with the info, and I was like skimming it. Okay, I didn't really see much. And so Victor's thing was that basically like, oh, I'm not recommending the U7 Pro because it's a 2x2 device, not a 4x4 device. And again, 2x2, 4x4, whatever it takes. Well, yeah, the higher number is better, but I thought, my problem is not like, so my understanding of the 4x4 versus 2x2 is multiple in, multiple out, like the number of antennas that can like simultaneously, send and receive to my single device. And I thought, why it's not a speed issue, right? It's not a bandwidth issue. More lanes on the superhighway would give you more bandwidth, but like that's not my issue. Why does this 4x4, like limitation affect me? And I didn't get it at first. So Victor wrote back and really pointed me to a couple of links specifically. So if you go to that website, #yisfi.com/# anchor tag, whatever, MIMO in all caps. So multiple in, multiple out, or #recommendation for kind of the distilled recommendations. Those are both really useful. So they point out the key Wi-Fi concept. They quote, "It's easy to overlook and miss, but beamforming and diversity are the key reasons why you would want a 4x4 MIMO router, even though most clients are still only 2x2 MIMO. The extra antennas are actually used and offer significant value, a stronger signal, which translates to better better connection speeds for faraway users." So essentially, these multiple antennas are also used for beamforming, which kind of like sends the signal more directionally toward your device, which is just an amazing like kind of concept in physics, I guess, and like radio frequency stuff. But the fact that it can like essentially send a stronger signal in that direction where my device is, in theory, might have helped where this would not have been an issue for me if it was a 4x4 router instead of a 2x2. So, or
Access
4x4
point.
access point. Thank you.
Yep. Sam, you learned all this when you got that fancy pants Wi-Fi certification, right?
I learned some of it, but just like Joe was saying earlier, like he mentioned something that he relearned. It's like you do this enough time, and if you're not like in Wi-Fi every single day, there is more you can forget than you can even imagine.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did learn a lot of this, but some of the concepts, unless you do it every day, is hard to retain.
Yep.
I mean, you can make a joke and say, well, they put out the Wi-Fi 7s and it's the latest version, and they wanted to make them 4x4s, but they ran out at the factory. So they had to make them 2x2s. I mean, you could make that joke, but there must be a reason why it's not because, we can make it and no one will know we got 2x2 in here. There must be a reason that technology is advancing, and maybe there's some explanation why 2x2 passes now with Wi-Fi 7. Who the hell knows?
Well, I mean, they don't even have, the U7 doesn't have an enterprise version. It's just a Pro.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
So we don't, I mean, we'll see what happens if they do release one, but that's...
Well, the other chatter about UniFi, about the U7 Pro, people were complaining about this like, huge controversy apparently over the fact that Internet of Things, IoT devices, have issues with the U7 Pro, and like everyone knows it and whatever. And I felt like an idiot because we started, we rolled them out to like 3 different, like relatively large homes right in the beginning, and like we didn't have any issues, thankfully. But I thought, oh God, I'm sweating, now everybody's having this issue and like we're going to see it. We haven't seen it. And I wonder, and apparently it's only on the 2.4 gigahertz network because that's what most, Internet of Things use.
Yeah.
If you have 50 or more or something like that, IoT devices, which a lot of my clients probably do, but we also have a high number of APs. So in those homes, like every few rooms, like in a bedroom or kitchen or whatever, there's like access points all over the place. And so, I guess that's how we avoid the issue. But have you guys seen that at all yet? Jerry, you're nodding your head. Have you seen this at all? This issue?
No. What was widely reported, but the one place that I had a Pro 6 Pro Enterprise, right, was in a classroom deployment, actually in a long hallway. It almost looked like it was one of those temporary classrooms, where it looks like it's done in a trailer and it's just like a shotgun kind of
like
approach to.
Yeah.
And they were, all of a sudden, just out of the blue, everybody's like, oh, well, everybody knows like the internet just drops in and drops out. And that was with the Pro E. And this is what I shared with you and Sam.
Right.
And I put in the 7 Pro, not the 7, but the 7 Pro. and it's been perfect. So
Nice.
just the
Awesome.
opposite. But there's no IoT going on there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the other thing, that the detail that came up about this was that UniFi, so they released the U7 Pro like a year ago or 6 months ago, something like that, 9 months. And then there was like subsequently a FCC filing. Like we see this leak about Apple sometimes. There's some like new product that they're getting approval for, some like radio design or whatever for.
Yeah.
Well, UniFi submitted some new spec for a U7 Pro that has like 1 or 2 extra chips in it or something. So the speculation is, oh, like they're going to put in a dedicated controller for like the 2.4 gigahertz radio, or I don't know what the speculation is, but there'll be a hardware rev at some point. And so these early adopters, like, literally have a different hardware model, even though it's apparently going to be the same product, unless it's just maybe they're going to rebrand, that'll be the U7 enterprise model. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, do we know that from the FCC? I don't know, but yeah, so that could also change this, where maybe they go to 4x4 MIMO. But for me, I mean, this worked. I just was surprised that I had to actually tune it to that degree and try with trial and error to get it right.
I guess now, since as I'm hearing this, I understand it like as you're setting your minimum RSSI so that it will not, obviously you have one AP, so that it will not switch APs when roaming. It'll actually switch frequencies when it's in the car. That's really, really interesting.
Right. Well, because the minimum RSSI is per radio. So if you go into your AP, so I adjusted it for the 6 gigahertz. So my assumption is like, okay, so it's not going to let me maintain that 6 gigahertz connection. And therefore, like you said, it's going to fall back on 5 gigahertz because it's only one AP. So
right. But 88 is really high, as Sam made the observation too. That means that when you went into the kitchen, it must drop off like precipitously, right?
Well,
because
that was kind of my goal. That's sort of so my goal was like, just forget about 6 gigahertz. Like, I don't want you to try to hold on to 6. I don't need a 1 gig connection if I'm in the kitchen. Like, I don't need it anyway, frankly, but like, just forget about 6 gigahertz, like, more quickly, because apparently the AP, I don't know which device to blame, but like my phone is hanging on to 6 gigahertz past the point where it can't actually use it. So that was the issue, but
that is curious. Okay. I mean, I gotta say, Wi-Fi is a freaking mystery, even if you're like, I mean, there are some out there where Wi-Fi is not a mystery, but for us, and like, even I've taken these classes, I've done all these different things to try and learn it more, but there are still mysterious parts of it that it's like, oh, that worked? Okay, great.
Yeah. No, this was my first experience having to adjust this. I mean, I don't know really like how I would figure out adjusting the transmit power. Like, that's something that I should know about doing a big installation where, you don't want the APs to overlap so much or whatever. Setting channels, I just let UniFi optimize the channels usually. Like, I don't, I guess if I knew better, I would be able to like manually kind of tune that perfectly and not have it change. But I mean, it's amazing we've gotten this far without knowing some of those more like detailed things. And I'm sure Sam, from your these kinds of bigger jobs you're going on, like about just planning a job like that and deploying it and tuning it and so on.
Well,
do you want to dive into that? Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah. But I think some of that is like, because you may have to have multiple access points within closer proximity to each other, you have to adjust that strength and everything, because you don't want them stepping on each other, but you want them close enough by so that they can switch over. It's like this whole little dance.
How do you know? Like, how do you, is it trial and error? Like, what's the best practice for figuring that out?
No, I mean, there are some good site survey tools that are out there, but like this job that I'm about to talk about, we actually hired, I think I talked about this on a previous show, but we hired a company to do the entire site survey because it was multi-floors, just intense job that I don't think my level of experience would have been good enough to handle all of it. It's just a lot, because you have 107 access points in all these floors. And that, by the way, that was half of the amount that was originally recommended.
Oh, that's right. That was the one where they spec double the access points initially. And then like was it your partner that spec the double, like the company you partner with, or was it a previous?
The Wireless LAN Professionals, who are awesome, by the way. I would highly recommend them. They actually will fly out to you and work on the job with you.
Wow.
But yeah, anyway, the client, they gave a less expensive option for the client, and this
Right.
client took it.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So this, if you don't mind me going on the tangent here on the UniFi, Joe, that was,
Let's do it.
so we had these 107 access points, and what we were seeing was basically periodically just a bunch would just fall offline, just completely go offline. And if you walked up to them, the light was on.
Wow.
So it was running, it was getting power, but it wasn't broadcasting, and it wasn't showing that it was connected. So all showed connectivity, but nothing there. And then like I would reboot the switch. This is actually, I was talking to you guys via chat. I think I went over there at like late at night after we did the install, and I rebooted a switch, and I had to do it for the full 2 minutes. And I was like, hooray, you know, the 2 minutes for the win. And they all came back up online. I did each switch throughout the whole location. I think there were 10 switches on multiple floors. So, and I was walking around this place late at night with no one else in the building. It's like a mid-construction place. And it was a little creepy just walking around there, like this whole facility. Anyway, so I got them up, and then that's when I decided, because we had initially suggested a watt box for the server closet. I'm like, let's get watt boxes, little 2 outlets watt boxes for all of the IDFs for the other closets. And because they have an Ethernet, they have fiber that connects them all, but they have an Ethernet backbone. So we connected all the watt boxes to the main switch Ethernet, so that if one of those switches went down, we could still cycle the power and be connected.
Okay. Nice.
So it actually worked out well. This what we had suggested initially was 2 fiber runs through for each switch, and then a backup Ethernet just in case of anything. And we ended up stealing that backup Ethernet for the watt boxes.
Nice.
So anyway, getting down to it, this thing was still happening. Like it worked, and then a few days later, they started dropping off here and there, like 12 here, 10 here. And I was really starting to freak out, because this is a big job, and I'm like, oh my God, what went wrong? You know, you start to
So was the building occupied and people were reporting in, or this is, like you say, pre-construction, and you were just visually seeing them go down?
Yeah, good point. They still have not moved in yet. The start date has been pushed back continually for a lot of reasons, not just us, but that's what happens on big construction jobs. But so yeah, no one was in there. It's just a few people were in there just testing things, and like the general contractor and one employee that's managing the job, she was noticing and stuff. So yeah, so it was going in and out, and I think this was before I left. I finally was at my wit's end. I posted it on the Ubiquity channel on Mac Admins, and Michael Thompson actually chimed in, always a great contributor, and a few others that I'm sorry I don't have the names in front of me, but I will check, give credit where credit is due. They started mentioning the mounting plates for the access points themselves causing a short in the communication and just killing it. And I'm like, the mounting plate? I'm like, there are 107 access points. So, but here's the interesting thing. Let me just pause for a second. I first started up a ticket with Ubiquity, and one of the like level 1 techs was like, oh, you're going to need new mounting plates. I'm like, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. That's idiotic.
How did we do? 1 star.
Yeah. That's ridiculous. And then I go into the Ubiquity Slack channel, and people are like,
sure, if Michael Thompson tells you, that's one thing, but if
Michael, I believed you.
Oh man.
So yeah, I was like, oh my God, this is for real. So so I talked to them, and Ubiquity was like, we'll send you all new ones. And then thankfully I was not doing the labor, by the way.
So yeah, what they sent you was a fiber, some sort of a plastic, or some sort of a non-conductive,
non-conductive mounting plate. Exactly.
Mounting plate. And was there any metal in that mounting plate, the replacement that they sent you?
I think inside, I think it's coated, but it's still a metal piece.
It's powder coated. And I remember reading the thread. I forget if it was Michael or someone who said, be careful that you don't like literally scratch the powder coating part, because then you've got more exposed metal. So now you could be back to square one. So, wow.
Okay. And for the electrical engineers in the office, if you, in the podcast listening sphere, on the back of the Ubiquity access point, it's all plastic, right? Even where you connect the Ethernet. So how was the metal plate supplied with the original metal plate? How was that creating some sort of an arc or a ground issue, or
Oh, on the plastic backing, you mean?
on the original one.
What's the actual problem? If
Where's
the
the point
plate
of
is
contact?
metal,
Yeah.
but the AP is plastic,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
what's the issue, right? Yeah,
Like,
I still don't quite understand that
and the
either.
screws on top of it all. People were talking about the screws also causing. And then again, I think it was Michael that had said we actually covered the screws with electrical tape, covered the screw heads.
Right.
It's like I mean, this is all new to me. And I'm actually looking out here into Victor Glenn was also chiming in. I'm trying to see some names just so I don't give only one person credit. John Haywood was commenting. There are a bunch of people in here that we're talking about it, a couple people with experience. So long story short, we got them delivered and I asked the guys to replace them. But as it turns out, this is actually new information that I didn't put in the chat. There were only a small handful that actually didn't already have the coated mounting plates.
Wow.
Yes. So this is my latest iteration in this nightmare. Now, here's the funny part. They're all up. They've been up for weeks now. I don't know. The workers did remove and remount them. I did ask them
with the new plates.
No, they had to remove them to see if they had the old plates.
Okay, got it.
So then they would just clip them back on.
Right.
And I asked them during this process to please cover the screw heads as well. And I just found out that they didn't.
Okay.
So I'm like, well, you're going to have to touch 107 access points again. What do you want me to tell you? It's in writing.
Right.
Like,
I gave you instructions. Yeah. How do we do 1 star again?
1 star again. Yeah. But they are all up and they have been ever since they at least remounted them, which is a little sketchy and scary.
Oh, man.
So like I'm hanging on a thread here with this job.
Yeah.
And then I was just chuckling to myself because there's one that's permanently offline because it somehow got stolen. Like someone literally took it off the ceiling and left with it. Like we're like, oh, this one's offline. We walked over to it. And it's like, it's gone. It's just gone. Off the ceiling.
You got to put an air tag inside of all of your APs from now on, you know?
Yeah, no kidding, right? See where it goes.
But we still don't know the science of why this is happening.
No idea.
Yeah, I think someone had posted a little video of like a spark that can get created. And I'm trying to find out why. I don't know.
Does it matter like where, like, so if you attach the mounting plate to like a junction box that's metal, the junction box that could be like a ground essentially. So that's a path to ground that maybe, was never accounted for in their testing or something. That's like just one random guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm willing to go with anything on this point.
Well, actually, so that's the question. How are the mounting plates mounted? Are they screwed into like, sheetrock, or is it, like to junction boxes?
No, they're not to a junction box. They thread through and go up into the ceiling, but that is a good point about what they're connected to. That could be also causing that spark or connection issue.
It's not a drop ceiling and you're using the clips that come with the access point.
No, these aren't drop ceilings, unfortunately. But yeah, I'll get a picture actually too, and just maybe I'll throw it in the show notes and
next to the coffin. Yeah,
next to the coffin. Yeah, that'll be me if I don't fix this job.
And so, Sam, just to clarify the like total illogical like part of this, which is some of the original mounting plates are already the powder coated ones, others are metal, and both of those were having issues up until they were all like unmounted and remounted to the same exact mounting plates.
Yeah.
So like there's kind of no rhyme or reason to like what. Okay.
With the exception of the small percentage that did have the metal ones and were swapped out, but out of 100 they were like, under 20.
Right, and you had problems with the ones that were already the correct mounting plate. Yeah,
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, but you could easily see, Joe, even if you had one in the mix that it's a connected network, so it could take down a series of them depending on how they interconnected with one another.
Maybe, but it sounds like it really, I mean, it shouldn't, but this is like a weird edge situation anyway, because I mean, it's like they're going offline into a state where they're not like rebooting themselves. They're not like they're physically receiving power, but they're not responding to the controller essentially. And they're not doing their job either. They're not like sending and receiving Wi-Fi, right? At that point.
Right, exactly. There's no signal at all there going on. So
That's
if you're
really
listening to
weird.
this show and you know exactly what the problem is, we welcome you to come on. We'll give you Sam's Debbie Gibson hat that he's wearing tonight. And that's about all we can promise you
Yeah.
at this point.
nice.
But we
Well
would love to
played,
talk
Jerry.
to somebody who's actually, I mean, I would just love
Jerry's
to know the
usually
science behind it.
asking for free clothing. Now he's giving away our
Giving
our
away my
clothing.
clothing,
Right.
And by the
Clothing
way,
swap live here.
another reason to watch the video, Sam is being lit tonight by candlelight, and he has
Yeah,
a lovely
that's
little
right.
glow going
Yeah.
on.
Like
behind
I said,
we
I
also-
didn't pay the electricity or the heating.
Right.
It's just-
we can't explain the flicker on Sam's video any more than we can explain the
Who's
like.
that? Who's there?
Yeah. But so that's really a wild issue.
Jacob
Sam.
Marley.
Yeah.
So
there
the
you go.
other
Nice.
Yeah.
There you go.
The other question I had for you, Sam, is when you said you have that backbone for the watt boxes, to control all the switches. So like, did the switches ever like become unresponsive? Because in theory, you could just tell the switch to restart in the console and cycle PoE, right?
Yeah, but it's the 2 minutes that did it every time.
Okay, right.
So I needed
Oh,
the full
man.
I would have to turn it off in the watt box, set a timer for 2
Wait.
minutes,
Yeah.
and turn it back on.
Well, you're welcome for that tip, by
Yeah,
the way.
thank
So
you.
that
Thank you.
has
I
had
love you for
so.
that.
I remember the moment. It was a Saturday, and I was like, I was like the like. What
This
do you
is
call
a
it? I
hooray
don't
for
know.
Joe story.
Yeah, this is a hooray for me story. No, it's a Saturday. My guy was on site. I had one guy on site in Norwalk and in Connecticut, and one guy on site in New York City. 2 different offices, like linking them by installing new UniFi gear.
Wow.
And so they called me and they're like, we've tried everything, the thing won't power up and whatever. And this is like probably after flailing for like an hour or more, they reach out to me and I said, I said, you tried power cycling it, right? Oh yeah, we tried that like 5 times. I'm like, all right, power it off for 2 minutes. I'm telling you right now, turn it off for 2 minutes. Like leave it unplugged. Make sure it's at least 2 minutes. Promise me you'll wait and then like plug it back in. And they're like, that worked, So it's just like one of these things where it's a lesson that like I feel like I will never forget. However, Tim was on site recently. I noticed before I knew he was going on site to what is he going to do? He's going to change the Wi-Fi password and reconnect some wireless devices like Sonos and things like that needed like hands-on. So we went on site to do that. And I said, hey, I just checked in the console the night before. It's been the gateway's up for like 100 and something days. I'm like, let's just power cycle it while you're there. So he gets in touch with me. Everything else worked out, but the UDM-SC wasn't powering on. And I'm like, well, I'm glad you're there, first of all, because, if I had just rebooted it last night, like thinking, or just randomly otherwise, because I do that a lot. If I see 150-day uptime or something, I'm like, and it hasn't had for whatever reason, there's no update or whatever, let me just proactively restart it. Well, this one didn't come back on. And it's, oh man, what was the message? It was like, something like we detected a problem or something like that, and it's like, it displays it on the screen. And tells you have to like power cycle it. And you're like, I just did power cycle it. Like, this is not fixing it. It says, it's first does the thing where it says it is taking a little longer, to whatever.
Unexpected or something.
Yeah. And then it's like UniFi OS requires a restart. Please try powering console off momentarily and back on again. So, Tim, of course, knows by now to like try the 2-minute restart at least. At one point, he's doing other things. Oh, no. At one point, he tried that a few times, didn't work, unplugs it, leaves to go back to his home to pick up the UDR that he had in stock, just in case kind of thing, brings it back to the client site. It's 40 something minutes later. The thing's been unplugged the whole time, plugs it back in, still doesn't turn on. So we're like, wow, okay, this is a write-off. Let's send it back to support. So he put in the new gateway, like left with the unit, whatever, leaves it off. It was powered down for like a day or something, messes with it today, powers on, no problem. So, maybe 2 minutes isn't enough in some cases. So that's the moral of that story.
More than 40.
I mean, yeah, exactly. 40 minutes is enough. So to me, this UniFi stuff sometimes has these really weird power issues, and it may be of a piece with the AP, like having some kind of weird grounding thing or whatever it is. So I second that call out to Jerry's electrical engineer, audience member there that's going to come in and say, here's what you guys need to know. Here's what to do, because waiting 2 minutes generally works. But like, what if that doesn't work? Is there
Yeah.
something more we can do? Does that mean, is there a problem with the circuit that it's plugged into? Maybe it's ungrounded. Like maybe the phase is wrong, whatever. I'm just throwing out terms I've kind of heard of, but
Yeah, and that's what we do. Just throw out just technical jargon
yeah.
at the wall and just
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, talking about power, this last week I had to go an hour and a half because a Sonic wall went down, and the lights were on though. Like it was on, but they were like static. They weren't showing activity, and the person was finding it hard to describe, and we're trying to do FaceTime. So anyway, I go all the way up. Thankfully, I had an extra power adapter with me. I plugged it in. Poof, the whole network came back up.
Wow.
So it was just the power supply that was bonkers, but still providing power. That's the thing.
Just not enough or the right kind. What's the problem in that situation? That's what I'd like to know.
Yeah, me too.
That's
anyone,
weird,
please.
And then just wrapping up the stories of Wi-Fi here. So Jerry told the story. We talked about this in a show recently about how, hold off on the new MacBook Pros. Maybe not hold off, but just maybe pause and take a look at this. The fact that they shipped with Wi-Fi 6E, not 7. And, I'm thinking at first initially, it's not a big deal. Who really cares? How much Wi-Fi do you need or whatever? But it is kind of a shame. Like my phone, I'm standing here and I'm getting like close to a gigabit of speed over Wi-Fi, which is insanely cool to see, in like a speed test on my phone. But then my Mac can't do it. My Mac can't do it. And okay, I have the M2 MacBook Air, but the MacBook Pro that just shipped 2 years later, Pro, right, still doesn't have the 6 gigahertz built in, and it only has Wi-Fi 6E. So it is something that is a shame just that it doesn't have that. It would be nice that a brand new Pro machine did support it. And the other thing that Jerry pointed out at the time in that video was that
let me just interject here. Yeah. So there's this independent video, which we could put in our show notes, and I'll let Joe talk about that. But I posted that on the Slack channel, and talking about the fact that the MacBook Pro doesn't have the latest Wi-Fi spec that's in the phone. And I got tarred and feathered is what I did. Yeah. I got skewered up and down and sideways and whoa, why do you need that? You don't need that. Apple forever kind of thing. And, so I put my tail between my legs and shut up. But tell them what we saw in the video.
I mean, so the video was, maybe a little sensationalized, I guess you could say.
Clickbait.
But the specific, so I linked, if you do the show notes, Sam, I linked to the specific part of the video.
If you do the show notes, Sam.
That's a big
if it's a Wi-Fi, it's a AI thing. But so the issue is the fact that you don't have the maximum top speed means that also over distance, the signal degrades, of course. And so it makes more of a difference on the far side of things, behind a wall or 2 rooms over, to have the bandwidth that's already limited even from the very beginning is kind of my take on it. Signal attenuation basically is kind of a logarithmic thing. It drops off quickly over time, or over distance, I should say. And so if you don't have the fastest, speeds, and the maximum theoretical side, you also are going to have much slower speeds in the practical sense at the, at a distance, which, now I'm rethinking this based on the difference between signal propagation of 5 gigahertz versus 6 gigahertz. Because again, I remember going through this. I don't know if you guys remember when Apple added 5 gigahertz to the Airport Extreme. That was my go-to, for a while way back when, right? It's throw a few Airport Extremes into a home. They can act as an AP or a router. They can have Wi-Fi, wired uplink or wireless, all that.
Nice.
And 2.4 gigahertz propagated better than 5 gigahertz. So we would go in and quote upgrade some client networks and find this performance was worse. Again, mostly if you were using mesh, than, with the old system, depending on the environment. So I learned that lesson back then when I thought, the higher the number, the better, 2.4 versus 5, now 5 versus 6, I think we have a similar issue. So I'm not so sure if that signal attenuation like quote problem with like that they're describing by the lack of Wi-Fi 7 is an issue in practice, whereas if 5 gigahertz might just like work best in the field kind of thing, for a laptop. I don't know. I'm sure Apple will add it and it'll be better because it'll still have the ability to fail over like I was describing with my phone. But yeah, I mean, I think it is meaningful that they don't have it in there, and it's kind of surprising that they don't. But.
And has it affected your buying decision?
No, I still plan to get it. I mean, that's maybe a topic for another time, but I do plan to get the M4 Pro MacBook Pro because I want more capacity in terms of storage. That's one factor that I seem to always just be hitting that limit. I also want more memory. I want, faster, like the ability to, run some of the like Apple intelligence faster on a local basis, but also like maybe to play with some AI stuff. So I just think like I'm so impressed by the increase in performance in these chips that's kind of driving my decision besides the storage capacity upgrade. But I'll still go through with it because I don't want to wait. I mean, what am I going to wait for? Like next year we'll have Wi-Fi 7 maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I'll
just suffer with 6E or whatever. I got one more UniFi thing to wrap us up since it's the UniFi show today. Unless
let's keep it all UniFi. I was gonna throw something in towards the end there, but I think let's just
UniFi it up
on topic.
Yeah, this is a quick just to wrap up again the UniFi topic. Going back to UniFi and Sonos, we talked about in a previous show the best practices that UniFi recommends for incorporating Sonos into your network. Where basically if you can have all the Sonos devices be wired, that's better. Who would have thought? Of course it's better. But that also enables you to turn off Wi-Fi, and that completely avoids the bridging loop back issue that Sonos devices seem to have sometimes. I've seen those issues with Sonos going back to the Airport Extreme, talking about those devices. So this is not like a UniFi thing exclusively, but it seems to be, especially with UniFi lately. So best practice is turn off Wi-Fi on all the Sonos devices, use a wired uplink for everything. And then we had to also ensure that we have all current Sonos hardware at our client locations, because otherwise you've got Sonos Net in the mix, which then has its own like layer of problems that manifest in the same way. So, okay, in theory, this all makes sense. Turn off Wi-Fi, leave the wired connection. So Tim went on site to do that yesterday. He replaced like 3 lingering old Sonos devices that I complained about, another vendor was supposed to have replaced and they didn't. So we replaced those. That let us have all new current Sonos hardware, in theory, turn off Wi-Fi and leave wired. Problem is, in some cases, you go to the new Sonos app. Okay, I forget if it's the S1 or S2 or whatever, but you go into the app and you go to whatever it takes. You turn off Wi-Fi. Simple, right? Turn off Wi-Fi, and the Sonos app should say, "Okay, we turned off Wi-Fi." In some cases, it just hangs or it spins and freezes or whatever. So it
turn off.
Yeah, but not in every case. In some, he's like, I turned it off on like 10 Sonos devices and it's fine, and then like these other 5, don't. It just spins. He's like, I'm gonna have to come back. I don't know what's going on here. This is terrible. So I do some searching. I'm like, oh God, before he leaves, like, I would love to have a project wrapped up and not be like, hey, your network is half done,
Yeah.
Let me guess, unplug for 2 minutes.
Precisely.
No way.
No.
You nailed it. Yeah. Yeah. So the
I learned that
from Jerry.
Yeah, I learned that from another tech down in Norwalk. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. You went to the office there, huh? So this is, and Tim's like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that, because I find the answer in a Sonos community chat thing, right? So and somebody was like, turn off Wi-Fi and then just unplug the device and plug it back in, and then Wi-Fi's off. Sure enough, it worked, And Tim's like, I don't want to do that. Like the Sonos is like blinking white, like it's busy. Like, don't unplug me, He's like, this is exactly when I'm not supposed to unplug something. And I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm like, just try it, Like, what have we got to lose? Right. So he does it, and he's like, yeah, sure enough, that worked in every single case. Like you basically, you save, Wi-Fi off. Okay. And I said, wait 2 minutes, after turning it off, like before you do anything, just to make sure like it got the message or something. Cause my theory is, okay, like the device turned off Wi-Fi and now the app doesn't know how to talk to the device. It's not getting the response like, okay, good news, I'm on wired now, for whatever reason. Right. So that's my theory. And I guess that because so I just like turn off Wi-Fi, wait like a minute, whatever, assuming like it got the message. Now unplug it from power, wait 2 minutes, plug it back in, and you're good to go. And he tried
Crazy.
cycling a few of them after to make sure like it still stayed off, and it worked. So
Nice.
even though you don't know that it's getting the message, apparently it does, and it solved it. So we finally wrapped up that project after months of dealing with all kinds of issues that I've talked about on the show. So that was another little
Amazing.
wait 2 minutes tip. There you go.
Just do that for everything.
Yeah. Well, all right. That was another good focus on UniFi. I feel like UniFi should be sponsoring some of these episodes by now. Just send us a couple free APs that we can do with as we please, right?
I'm so glad we got the band back together. Thanks, guys.
There you go, Sam. Nice. Better you than me saying that one. Oh, man. All right. Join us again next week for another great episode of Command Control Power, and support us on Patreon if you're so inclined. If you want some extra content, a little bit more of a peek behind the scenes where I complain about the details of all these this trouble that I've had at some of these on-sites. We talk all about it behind the scenes. Sam talks about exactly what he was doing in China, and Jerry talks about some of his client emails and text messages that he gets in the midst of recording the show. So
And
check
more
us
voices.
out on Patreon too, and he does the voices there too.
Yeah.
Exactly. So not to be missed. CommandControlPower.com. Thanks everybody for listening.